Thank you for gathering here today to discuss the nature restoration proposal. We have successfully brought together today experts from various fields representing different perspectives. And this is, by the way, precisely what should have happened when the Commission started to draft this proposal. On behalf of myself, I want to state it very clearly from the beginning of this event. I personally don't see any future for this proposal in its current form. Legislative actions are most effective when there is a balance between ambition and reality on the ground. Unfortunately, this legislation, as it stands, is overly ambitious, as it systematically disregards the current reality we live in. Two elements in particular make this proposal fundamentally problematic. First, the proposal includes an excessive number of restoration targets that are significantly different from each other. There is no reasonable justification for including measures encompassing diverse aspects, such as re-wetting peatlands and adding green space in cities within the same legislation. Each member state has its own concerns regarding the proposal, which also makes, or would make, negotiations extremely difficult. Secondly, the Commission's impact assessment and cost-benefit analysis are simply too vague. European farmers and forest owners have not voiced their concerns because they want to halt and stop all restoration efforts. Targets for protecting biodiversity are indeed in our common interest, but the Commission cannot be the sole authority shaping the means for achieving them. And when I say this, it has to be understood correctly. Of course, the Commission is not the sole authority. We know we have the institutions eventually negotiating the regulation, but I have to say that despite our best efforts, we feel that the Commission did not listen to us enough at any stage of the process until we unfortunately came to this situation where we find ourselves today. Our farmers and forest owners have tried to send a clear message from the very beginning of the Commission's drafts. If excessively high demands are imposed, the European food production and strategic autonomy are at risk. I am not suggesting that the EU should abandon all its goals for nature restoration. Quite the opposite. I'm just strongly calling for balance and fairness. At the end of the day, it is a matter of legitimacy of the European Union. If we, as decision makers, fail to listen to our citizens and to provide them with an equal voice, there will come a time when they will no longer listen to us. So, dear friends, with those words, I would like to open the panel, and we will start with two keynote speeches. The first one is from the CEO of the Finnish Forest Industries, Ms. Paula Lehtonen. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, and distinguished members of the European Parliament, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor for me to participate in this session today. I didn't mean to bring a Finnish sauna with me, but it means I will receive even that. But more seriously, thank you very much for MEPs, Sarvamaa and Wiesner and Nuena, for organizing this event. Finland is the most forest-covered country in the European Union. Since 1880s, the legislation has ordered, you shall not harm your forests. Just a few weeks ago, I visited a paper mill which was established in 1818. and it's still producing paper. Forest industry is nature-based industry, so well-being of nature is also our well-being. All our activities and success are based on sustainable forest management. By managing our forests well, we also improve the whole ecosystem and gain biodiversity. The availability of wood raw material is the basic prerequisite for forest industry's existence. Nature and forests have, of course, a broader value than just economic. It is a source of recreation, it is a carbon sink and storage. Against this background, it's natural that the overall purpose of the nature restoration can be supported. But the EU legislation should recognize much better some key elements of sustainability, elements that are lacking from current proposal. First, forests are a vital asset in speeding up the green transition and strengthening the European autonomy. Green transition means that we need to replace more and more fossil-based materials with renewable ones. We need to replace import-dependent value chains with European ones. Sustainably managed forests with a countable industrial chain can contribute significantly to this. Therefore, restoration targets as well as non-deterioration requirements must not unproportionately limit the sustainable use of renewable raw materials. Secondly, ecosystems, including forests, are not static, but in a continuous change. They as well must adapt to the future climate. Therefore, instead of looking in the rear view mirror, we should look for actions that actively prepare for future. Unfortunately, this is not visible in the proposal at hand. For example, the review for the favorable reference area back to 1950s does not help to meet the challenges of the future. And thirdly, the EU is a huge geographical area with many different vegetation zones. Even within a single country, conditions may vary dramatically. The indicators concerning all forests need to be set in each member state based on their own characteristics. One-size-fits-all approach simply does not work. Querido señor Dr. Juha, se puede apoyar el objetivo general de restauración de la naturaleza, pero la legislación europea debería reconocer mucho mejor algunos elementos clave de la sostenibilidad. En primer lugar, los bosques son un activo vital para acelerar la transición ecológica y reforzar la autonomía europea. Es decir, que necesitamos sustituir cada vez más materiales de origen fósil por otros renovables. Tenemos que sustituir las cadenas de valor que dependen de las importaciones por otras europeas. En segundo lugar, los ecosistemas, incluidos los bosques, no son estáticos, sino que están en continuo cambio y también deben adaptarse al clima futuro. Por lo tanto, un año de referencia que se remonte de la década de 1950 no resuelve los retos del futuro. En tercer lugar, la Unión Europea es una zona geográfica enorme, con muchas zonas de vegetación diferentes. Un enfoque único para todo no funciona en este caso, y los indicadores relativos a todos los bosques deben establecerse en cada estado miembro. Necesitamos impulsar y promover la gestión forestal sostenible en toda Europa para que nos proporcione tanto valores naturales como activos clave para la transición ecológica. Dear participants, renewable choices for everyday consumption and respecting biodiversity are not either or, but both and issue. We need to boost and promote sustainable forest management across Europe so that it can provide us with both nature values and key assets for green transition. We must and we can find ways to combine different goals. This is the work we are strongly committed to. The proposal for nature restoration law has rightfully raised an exceptional European discussion. It risks becoming a very controversial legislation, which is far from being an optimal situation. Now and in the future, we need actions that unite and not divide.
Madam Lehtomäki, for your opening speech. And now I have honor and privilege to have maybe something that is a counter, I don't know yet, but let's hear from Dr. Cesar Luena, the rapporteur for the Nature Restoration Regulation. Please.
Buenos días. Good morning, everybody. I was thinking when I come in, yeah, I think this morning is like when Madrid played in the Barça Stadium. But after the one, I think, oh, no, maybe Atletico de Madrid. But no, Barça. It's your home, okay? Okay, I want to speak in Finnish, but it's impossible. Okay? But you have a very, very good Spanish. Enhorabuena. It's a very good pronunciation of the Spanish. Well, two things before read an ideas I think is important to you in this morning. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you. It's very important in these crucial days before the votes. I think we don't have change. I think in 15 June and after that in July in the plenary. And this is important for me the opportunity to have this meeting with you. So thank you so much. One thing. I am deeply open to negotiate with everybody in every moment about everything. Absolutely, deeply open. Because, this is the second idea, I want to pass this regulation. Because I think we need this regulation after 70 years of European construction. I think we need this regulation. We have many rules, many regulations about everything. Maybe in some years we can have an army, European army, and we don't have a nature regulation. No, certainly is I think is strange. Then I think we have an birds directive and habitats directive, no more, only two directives, no regulations. Therefore, I think we need this regulation, and I am open, deeply open to negotiate until 15 and after these votes with member states, with members, and also with the sector. Okay, I would like to take my intervention to clarify some points about this. I think this is my role today, this morning here, as there are quite a few misunderstandings and misinterpretations and many false statements on this. I have heard comments that the nature restoration law means more protected areas. No. The law is not about creating more protected areas. No. There is no obligation to build the network to protected areas with this proposal, nor limit economic activity. Second, I have heard that the the law is not needed as we have enough similar legislation already. The law is an essential tool in order for the EU and member states to meet their international commitments under the Global Biodiversity Framework. In the powers, we were in Montreal, in December. The current tools have not had the degradation of nature. This requires strengthening the existing legal framework. Third, I have also heard that the law will bring the EU back to the 50s. No, member states are only asked to take historical data into account. The law is not about returning to the past. It's about preparing our future. To restore, you need to know what was lost. But member states decide what to do. Member states, not the regulation. I have also deleted the famous mention to the 70% from my compromises. Repeat, deleted. Another false statement is that the law will put 10% EU land out of production. This is not true. There is no mention of this commitment as an obligation for member states. The 10% of EU agriculture land covered by high diversity landscape feature is only referred to in the provision concerning the Commission assessment of national restoration plans, and such is not a binding objective per member state. Anyway, I am flexible and open, I said, to negotiate this point as well. Another point widely discussed is that the law will impact food security. I think this is just the contrary. The law is key to ensure food security, food productions, and farmers' livelihoods. The biggest threats to food security are climate change and biodiversity loss. Those we know. Knowing about this concern, I have included food security as an objective in Article 1. It's an objective to know. Article 1. And the obligation for member states to ensure the agricultural production of the EU. It's a proposal of speciality and also renewable. That is in that. Another concern raised is that the law is an obstacle to the deployment of renewables. So, the renewables and restoration are not in conflict with each other, but can go together. This is the approach taken in law, which requires member states to ensure synergies. Several of the EU's major renewables producers support an ambitious nature restoration law and have expressed their worries about the false opposition being created between renewables and nature. I have also heard that the non-deterioration provision, the law will block developments. The law by no means intends to block developments in the European Union. No one wants to block developments in the European Union. On land, the non-deterioration provision only applies to habitats which occupy around 24% of EU land and are already covered by the existing habitats directive. Anyway, knowing this is a problematic point, I remain open to renegotiate it. Absolutely open. Another concern raised is that the law will increase risks for forest fires. The real risks for forest fires come from forests in poor ecological condition and is aggravated by climate change. Science is clear that more biodiversity forests are more resilient, including, importantly, to large-scale fires. I have also heard that the law will hamper urban development or that the agriculture and forest indicators go too far. Urban development will continue. The urban targets will only ensure that cities become greener. And for agriculture and forest ecosystems, we have increased the flexibility for member states in our compromises. Since I was appointed as rapporteur for this regulation, I have shown my openness to negotiate and to incorporate the main concerns that we raised by especially EPP and Renew groups during the negotiations. And I will continue. This afternoon we'll have the last shadow meetings to do so and to negotiate until the end, because I think rejecting the proposal is never a solution. In this case, it's not a solution. I think the solution is to negotiate and negotiate and negotiate and to find solutions in the meetings. Then this is my position. I appreciate a lot your invitation, and I think we have an opportunity to have a nature legislation in European Union. We have a very important role in the international spaces, but after this European Union reject its first nature regulation across the history, I think we will have a strange role in the international meetings. But the word is the first in the MB committee. You know, we are in the border. I know also that some positions are more than a MB position or best position or ugly position. I think some groups have strategic positions in a global political position. You know, we have elections in 15 months in Europe, but we have elections in many regions, in many cities, in many countries, like for example my country in 2 months. And I understand the strategic movements and the strategic positions, okay? But we are discussing about the strategic regulation for our future. And I think we need this regulation. But, okay, last, I think I have a surprise for you. I think we have numbers in the committee and in the plenary. But I think, because we are negotiating and negotiating, and negotiating and negotiating, and I appreciate a lot the position of the Green Group and also the Left Group, because and I think it's a thing that people doesn't know. And what is the flexibility of these groups in this negotiation to accept the positions of first PP and second Renew. This is the truth. After that, the floor is yours, and thank you for the invitation. Gracias.
I will not speak Finnish and not Swedish. I will speak English, also not Spanish. It's not my cup of tea. But thank you very much for being here, and I think it really shows how timely this discussion is. Also, having the rapporteur in the room really gives us a chance to exchange views and discuss this topic on depth. So thank you so much for being here. I know you have to run in only a few minutes. But we will first now introduce our panels, have a panel discussion. And I want to urge my fellow panelist colleagues to be brief, so there's also room for questions. We have many MEPs in the rooms that I know have a lot of questions and also maybe remarks and comments, but let's hope it's more questions and we can discuss the various topics of the legislation. First of all, I should introduce myself. My name is Emma Wiesner. I'm in the Renew Europe group in Envy, Agri and E-Trek, so very much in the center of the ongoing discussions in the committees. And I have the privilege of being co-host of today's seminar, and I will also moderate the panel discussions. So let's, without further ado, let's deep dive into it. And with us, unfortunately, there have been a bit of change in the program, because from the Commission, you said your aim, Cesar, was to also explain misinterpretations. But I think the Parliament's mandate and our role as institution is also to improve and represent the voice of the people, and then now we also have the Commission as the institution to explain a lot of the technical details and justify some of it, and that's why I'm really glad we have DG Envy in the room. So, but a change of speakers, it will be Ms. Carolina Dacuna, the Deputy Head of the Unit of DG Environment. So I will give the floor to you to introduce yourself and also introduce the legislation, and maybe touch upon the topic, what is trying to be achieved by the nature restoration legislation, and are these acts realistic from a Commission point of view? And then I will give the same question to the next speakers, but Carolina, you're first.
To everyone, and apologies on behalf of my director, Mr. Delgado Rosa, who was supposed to be here, but unfortunately could not come. So I will try to replace him. Indeed, I'm Deputy Head of Unit called Natural Capital and Ecosystem Health that work together with a unit that deals with the nature directives in a big team of experts to make this proposal. We adopted the proposal almost a year ago. It's going to be the first anniversary on the 22nd, I think, of June. So we put it on the table very, very quickly, and we have been discussing that for almost 12 months now. I will not introduce the proposal again because I think everyone knows it very well by now, but indeed our main objective was to respond to the call to halt and to reverse the loss of biodiversity in the EU. Now, if you think about this objective, and that is the objective, political objective that was put in the biodiversity strategy that responds to the European Green Deal, it sounds like a mission impossible to stop and to reverse the loss of all biodiversity in the EU. And that also responds to your criticism of why is it so diverse and why does it address so many aspects? Well, because biodiversity is everywhere. So we had to look at all ecosystems. And we tried our best with using all the best knowledge that we had and the solutions that we thought were the most appropriate. Obviously, there are things to do. We agree also with Mr. Wena that now, after all these discussions over 12 months, we can find solutions that will also help the most concerned stakeholders. And I wouldn't like to use the word affected, because I think that the actual impacts of this law will be in the way it is applied by member states, on the national level, on the regional level, in the way it's then shaped in the national restoration plan, because it is really a framework with rather high-level targets. They're not really targets. We are basically asking member states to improve certain indicators, and how they do it, where they do it, when, how much it's going to cost. It really differs per member state. So with that flexibility, then of course comes a great responsibility also for those who will put it into place in different regions of Europe. And they do differ, I completely agree. So a very complex matter to legislate it laws, I have to admit, and it still remains. I will maybe stop because I can go on, and I'm not the only panelist, but looking forward to those questions.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and I'm really glad that we're having the Commission in the room, because I think it brings also a lot of explanation and good remarks about to the table. Next, I will go to European Forest Industries. It's Dr. Magda Budager-Karat, who's here to give your view on the regulation, what is maybe the highlights of it and also the areas where you believe improvements can be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi everyone. So I'm Magda from European Forest Institute. I'm a principal scientist. I have a background in forest geneticists. I've been working for the last 20 years on biodiversity conservation, protection, and forest ecosystem restoration. So in the European Forest Institute, we are trying to bring science to action. So we bring what is the last results of science, and this is, for example, we are now leading an ambitious project called SUPER on forest ecosystem restoration, one of the 4 big projects granted by EU on ecosystem restoration. So the 3 others are on wetland, on coast, and on freshwater. So this means that the EU is counting on scientists to bring this knowledge to the table and be used for this kind of regulation. So our position is rather than the institute, it's more about the scientists that are more than 36 institutes in this consortium called SUPER. So we see that this regulation is really in a very good moment because the public is really aware and waiting for such a thing. It's not perfect, but it's normal because it's covering a huge part, a heterogeneous part, and as it was said, one doesn't fit all. So we have really, it has to be broad, but at the same time, it has to stay ambitious and bring some tangible results. And I think this flexibility, this is where we can give more flexibility to countries with their knowledge that are generated since many years and give responsibility to scientists and local knowledge to work on the national restoration plans. So Mr. Roininen just clarified the thing about looking to the historical state, and this was one of our main points, because we think that restoration should, as we see it, be called restoration, taking into account the future of our forests. Our forests are communities, and these communities already are changing. We have this mobilization, they are changing to adapt to climate change. And if we bring them back to what they were in 70 years, they all like, we are not helping them. So we should be looking forward and give them resilience to adapt to climate change, but also to other stresses. And this can be achieved through different ways, by enhancing biodiversity at different levels. Level of genes, level of species, but level also of landscape. And in the proposal of the law we have in the agriculture part, they took into consideration the landscape, while in the forestry part it's not really addressed. So I think linking them could be a nice thing. And working on land sparing and land sharing, where we can really give place to agriculture, but in sustainable agriculture, and some really protected forests, but also a space in between where we can work on this balance between massively used land, protected land, but also all what's in between. So, like we already prepared one policy brief that we can share with you after this meeting, and we are also ready to discuss. But we are really keen in supporting this law and bring it to be applied, take into consideration what local needs, and without hampering any economic activity or job loss, because forests are for giving service to people and people are for the forest. So,
if you could dream and make a fundamentally new draft of this regulation, or would it be a fundamentally new draft, or how would it be different if you were the one to redo it?
I think ideally it would be ambitious, still ambitious, very ambitious, but then we will have the targets, but we will leave to each country the way to decide what that it will be binding, but for the countries, their local knowledge, with what they have as type of forest and type of economic, I don't know what is the word, like taking into consideration the economic future, how they can manage their forest in a good way. So what we need, after all of us, is to save biodiversity, because this is good for agriculture, pollinators and other vendors. So the flexibility, I see it by keeping binding for nations, and each nation will define and report on this, so it's very, very important.
And would you say that the Commission has integrated the most recent science into this, or are there elements from a scientific point of view that you're missing?
From this part, I think the indicators part is the more scientific one, and it was based on the last science input as indicators, but it's not covering everything, and it really depends from different types of habitats. So even for the indicators, I think that it should be brought down to forest type, forest ecosystem, and the landscape level.
Okay, I will introduce our next speaker, but Carolina from the Commission, you can also have that, because I will raise that question to you. Have you taken the local conditions enough into account, or have you provided enough flexibilities for the local level as an answer to that? But first, I will introduce our third panelist. Welcome to the game. It's also another Carolina Niemi from the Finnish Forest Industries Federation. You will also get a chance to introduce yourself and give your main inputs, and then I will also open the floor for questions. If any members in the room or other invited guests, you want to raise your questions, now is the chance. But first, Carolina.
And good morning, everybody. My name is Carolina Niemi, and I come from the Finnish Forest Industries Federation. There I work as a forest director. It's a great pleasure to be here because if I see from our federation's point of view and from forest industry's point of view, restoration and enhancement of biodiversity is very, very important to us, as well as the tackle of climate change. And I think that's why the overall target of the nature restoration regulation is really important, and we can support that. But then we go to the details in the legislation, then we think that there are certain challenges, and as we already heard before, there are some of those issues that we see that we look at the rear view mirror in this regulation and not really see that our life is changing, our ecosystems are changing, so we have to adapt. We have to make our forests and our ecosystems ready for the future. It's really important that we see that kind of solutions, so how we can be ready, then it is 2055 or even 2100. So we have to ready to that kind of climate and so on. We already heard here that flexibility is needed. And then when we talk about flexibility, it's important to divide this regulation to two different parts. There are those which are binding targets, percentages for habitats under the nature directive. And then there are those indicators which are for all forest ecosystems. So I think those targets which are binding for habitats, it's really ambitious. When we think about the land use history in EU, in different countries, if we think about the resources we have in every member state and so on. So it's really ambitious. And if we think about the forest indicators, which are for all forests, so then, as we heard already earlier, it's important to have more flexibility because the forests are different. If we think about Spain or Finland, there is many, many thousands of kilometers, and we have to be, and we are sure that forests are quite different. So also the indicators and the things we do in our forest, they may vary quite a lot. So this is really important. And I have one issue which I would raise from the speech of Luena. He said that the restoration is not the same as protection. I think that is really important, we have to remember. But if we look at the Commission's impact assessment, it is really clearly said that if we want to ensure that these restored ecosystems are viable also in the future, they have to be partly protected. It's really clearly said in the impact assessment. So now when we discuss this, forest industry sees that restoration is really important tool in the toolbox to enhance biodiversity, but it has to be together with economic use of areas. And that's why we have to continue discussion that how can we combine these issues, nature and climate and economic use of, for example, forests and other ecosystem services.
So this is a starting point that overall target, okay, but we need to modify the content of the regulation.
Thank you, Dr. Niemi. I will ask the same question to you. If you could dream or redraft this, what would you change in the regulation?
More flexibility, as also Magda said, and more recognition of different ecosystems. And then also to see whether the targets are really so that we can reach them, because, for example, this 30% target until 2030, it is in 7 years. And the member states don't even know whether the habitats are in good or bad condition. They have to evaluate those areas and so on. So it's a huge process. So in order to take into account resources and the land use history, so much more time is needed to take these kind of actions. So that is, I think, really, really important. And then I highlight again that we need economic use of natural resources. So that's why we have to keep those areas on commercial use also in the future, because otherwise we can't go further with the green transition in the EU.
Thank you. And now I come back to the question to Mrs. Takuna. We hear the Nordics raising issues and complaining about especially Article 6. We heard from Ireland that the rewetting is a major issue. Some member states in the southern part of Europe are terrified of more wild forest fires, and they also raise complaints about this regulation in terms of that. What is your response? What is the Commission response to those member states saying that the target setting and implementation is not flexible enough to adapt and adjust to the different variations in each member state?
Well, there's no simple response to all these aspects, so we discuss them with those member states individually as we go, and we're looking for solutions if there is indeed a need for more flexibility, then we look into that. In Article 6 we are talking to the Nordic member states to find a way to accommodate their specific concern, which is that there are indeed quite big administrative units that are heavily forested, with then a rather small center that is fabric mainly, and if we apply the target that's concerned that if we apply the target to those large administrative units, then of course that will have a big impact on the greening objectives or non-loss. So we are looking into these specific conditions, and the game is still open. Then you also mentioned the Irish wetlands. Indeed, yes, we are talking to Ireland. We can see an Irish representative smiling there involved in those discussions. It's not only Ireland, it's also Estonia, it's also Latvia. They have big areas of wetlands. But there again, we are on the same page, and we all agree that wetlands are crucial for climate change mitigation and adaptation. We need to protect those areas, because otherwise we are cutting the branch and receiving at the same time. So we need to find a way to do it. And I'm not saying that this law is perfect, but don't ask me the question about the green law, please. But that's why we are all here in these negotiations, and so we perhaps need to take a bit more time to find a way that will help with real problems. But let's not just dump it and say, no, this is too difficult, because honestly, the stakes are super high. We need nature to help us with climate change. We need nature because we are part of nature. We need it in good condition, because we need forest, because we need renewables, because we need food, because we need all this. Otherwise, what do? We just close the shop. So there will be a certain cost, and also what I really want to stress is that these big groups of stakeholders, the foresters, the farmers, the fishers, they really will need support in this transition. But it's a completely different game than, for instance, the coal sector was facing when we had to transition to renewables. These stakeholders, we need them to absolutely thrive and produce more of what they do more of what they do, because they are the guardians of nature. We just need them to do it slightly differently together with nature. And for that they will need support, financial, administrative, legal, educational, and so on, tailored to their needs and conditions. So we need a sort of framework to also create those incentives, to set longer-term goals for the forestry sector in Europe, for the agricultural sector, to make it resilient, independent, and to create a future forever for this sector. It's not that we want to transition, make it disappear to that country. And I think there is a little bit of that here that we are against. This law maybe was not presented in the right way at the beginning. This law is for these sectors to make them stronger and keep them there for us forever.
I will not ask you the question about the dream regulation, because you were the one presenting it, so hopefully this is your dream regulation. I will now open the floor for questions. I have Asker on the list, if there are any other colleagues. And I also know that Dr. Niemi, you want to answer to the previous speaker, but first, Petri, short comment from your
Just a very brief comment, dear Carolina. Me or us, EPP, we don't want to dump this. When you said that, let's please not dump this, that we need this. We don't want to dump the regulation, but what we are saying that is a no-go is the outcome of what the Commission, DG Environment, mainly, and the Parliament, Envy Committee, are cooking up together, and the outcome to us at the very last 11th hour, last minute, seems to be something that we are like raising the flag and saying, no, we cannot live with this. And of course, like Cesar Luena said, and as you are saying, let's make it better. But there's definitely not much more time. And I have to say that there were several attempts to make it better, but we were not listened to. So this is why we are here.
No, also Dr. Niemi.
Thank you very much. I would like to come back to this wetland issue, which are in Ireland, but also in Finland. We have lots of peatlands in Finland, and more than 20% of the annual forest growth occurs on peatlands. So they are really important for our economic use of forest and production of environment-friendly wood-based products. So, and if we are now re-wetting those peatlands, or even part of them, they have huge economic negative impact on the regions and the whole forest industry and the whole forest sector in Finland. So that's why re-wetting is not the solution in all the cases, but we have to find solutions how to use those drained peatlands more sustainably. So that is our goal, and we have done that we have started that work already about 5 to 10 years ago, how to improve forest management on those peatlands. But we can't just simply stop using those peatlands for forestry, because that would have, as I said, really, really long-term negative effects on our economy in the regions and the country level. Thank you.
Now we have 3 colleagues on the questions list. We start with Asker, and then we have Mr. Jar, and then Mr. Sjöberg.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for this discussion here, because it's very important to get back and to see what we can do. Because yes, I'm dairy farmer and I'm also forest owner, and it's very, my colleagues are very afraid of that, what we see in this proposal. And on Danish, I would say we can wash and wash, but we will never be clean for this proposal from the Commission. And there's many things about in the proposal I'm very afraid about, because it's shall we have 30% of our area without nature to 2,000 areas and paragraph 3 areas, and so and my colleagues are very afraid about that. And one specific question. Baseline from 1952. For me, it's so much out of scope. it was a long time I have driven my farm with horses. So I go back to that. I'm not sure my colleague would say this is a good idea. And I think we must start up again. And because I really want to have better biodiversity. I really want to have better nature. But it should be on a way where my colleagues can see it, and we shall have a college with us, not put them in our way. And we will have some bad voting next year, so with this proposal we will still on the table, so it will be very, very bad next year for our elections.
Thank you, Oscar. And you are one of the members and colleagues in the Agri Committee voting, and PESH Committee voting to reject the proposal just recently. Peter Juha.
Thank you very much. Yes. Somebody said the public is waiting for such a dossier, is waiting for nature restoration law, and I write down what's about the people, because our main issue, the people don't understand what we are doing, and we are a democracy system. And that's why we have to explain the people and take the people with us. And what's also maybe the main mistake made by the Commission, not that the goal is okay and we have to do something in it, but we have also other dossiers on the plate. For example, I was a rapporteur of the common agricultural policy. This year it starts the new agricultural policy. There we have new conditionality. There we have so-called eco schemes. There we have national action plans. And for me, for example, one conditionality is to protect cat and wheatland. That's inside the agriculture reform. And if the member states want to do, they can bring the water back, and they can give money to the farmer for that. My simple question is why we could not waiting and have time to explain to people what's going on. And that's why the golden political bridge for me, and this would also be my question to the Commission, take back this dossier and make a real impact assessment and make a discussion, of course with the political leaders, of course with the scientific people, but at least with the people. Because that is our biggest political issue. The people don't understand what Brussels is doing. And that's why my simple question: is the road going down if we wait a little bit? If we wait what's going on in the agricultural sector? If we wait what's going on with the CO2 trade now, we want to include the forest in the CO2 trade, and so on and so on. Maybe we do too much at the same time, and there's confusion. But in the end, on the base, we need people, we need farmers to go this way together, and not say, "Oh, I don't understand." Thanks.
Thank you. Several colleagues mentioned political acceptance before, and also the coherence with other regulations, and also then the impact assessment. So I will give all of the panelists a chance to wrap up and respond to the inputs and questions. But first we have one more. So we may, Mr. Juha, welcome.
Thank you, Juha.
And maybe I will also wrap up by giving the word to the speakers, but also sending maybe my comments and concern about this, because I think you're raising an important point, and it's not the aim, the ones of us that are critical to this regulation, it's not the aim that we're questioning, but rather the tools and the means and implementation of it, and the social acceptance and all of the impact assessment material, or the lack of impact materials behind it that are of our main concerns. And I think we're jumping many steps ahead. Signing the declaration in Montreal saying we should do efforts of 20% of the 30% of the degraded land, and Commission presenting a far-reaching proposal with many detailed articles on how to protect 20% of all land. It's quite different. And the aim is still there, but how the implementation should be done, I think that was not agreed upon in Montreal. So maybe that's also my last question to the Commission, the rationale of skipping the steps between taking measures on degraded land to taking measures on all land, because that's quite different, and in member states it can vary a lot. I wait. No, you have 1 minute each. Hopefully, you can take two more minutes. I start with Dr. Karat. You need to start.
Thank you, Emma. I just want to say something about the southern country and forest fire concerns. I mean, restoration doesn't mean rewilding and let forests just grow anywhere, because this is where we have management approach that should be done in order to safeguard the biodiversity and at the same time all the species and ecosystem services that these forests are providing. And the last point, I want to say that, again, for these 4 big projects that the EU is funding about restoration of different ecosystems are presenting different demonstration cases in different countries, where everything is taken into consideration, the ecology, environment, but also the governance, the finance, and stakeholder engagement. And we are learning a lot of them, and they will be really very useful for implementing this regulation. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent.
Thank you very much. So to end, we have to combine restoration measures with commercial use of ecosystems. And I talk, of course, from forest and peatlands. We have to focus on this work to more Natura 2000 areas and protected areas, to start from there, because they are those which are already there decided, and we have to focus on those. And then this flexibility, so there are several delegated acts, so more flexibility to member states in those measures which we can do to restore, and also, for example, in those forest indicators. And we have to remember, we do a lot voluntarily already. For example, in Finland, the wood processing industry has started a huge work with the biodiversity roadmap. So we want to do everything better in the future in our forest. And we also collaborate with private forest owners in Finland a lot. So we don't need always a tight regulation, but let's give a carrot to the actors, to the stakeholders, to do that work voluntarily also, because that is the main driver in green transition and to enhance biodiversity and tackle climate change. So our roadmap will be ready at the beginning of September, so I hope you will hear about that roadmap in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And our final speaker,
Well, I could just say I agree with Carolina. Very good point. I would not fear this regulation so much, to be honest. I understand those concerns, but let's move it to trialogue, because now we are kind of moving a little bit in a circle. We haven't seen what the council, well, I suppose you have seen, but all the institutions have not put their documents on the table. So I think we really need to see what member states are proposing, what the parliament is proposing to change in this law, and see if we like it or not, because it's not that, if we stop discussing now, that there are other steps we can always pull the brake. But for now, I think it's very important that we move on and that we find solutions that you're seeking, because we believe that we have no time to take it back and to again discuss from the beginning how should we go about restoration on the very local level, etc. We will still end up with a draft proposal that will not make everyone happy. It's impossible. So what we have, let's just accept it's good enough and let's improve it, let's work with it. A lot has already been proposed and we can make it work. I believe it's really a framework that then will be implementable at the local level. And then we can also think how to best support that transition with various means, because of course we are here looking at restoration targets that are related to nature, but then we also need to see what do we need to make it work for every single stakeholder, region, it will differ. So that would be my message, and I'm actually just one thing that I wanted to add, I'm almost taking my time a little bit, but I think it's good that we made this proposal now, because I don't think we would have this level of a heated debate if we were still online, at our desks and, discussing consultations and so on. If there is no proposal, there is no interest like that. I believe it's good to trigger this interest. Even if this doesn't fly, at least we have talked about it in such a way. We wouldn't have had that chance if we hadn't proposed for the nature restoration. That's my commitment.
Thank you so much. I think we can debate the last point back and forth a while, but we will not do it here and now, because we already are overstepping our time. I just want to finish by thanking all of the guests and all of the speakers, of course. But I also want to wrap up by stating something that my colleague Mr. Salama said in the beginning. If there are not substantial changes to the text, it will be very hard for large share of Parliament to accept this. So a lot is in the hands of the rapporteur and the rapporteur team to find improvements to the text. Of course, we want to work together, but it all is in the hands of the rapporteur group, whether they propose changes that are big enough. So thank you all. I'm a big fan of breakfast events. As a Swede, I really like the breakfast, and there's a huge amount of breakfast left. So please feel free to grab a sandwich or juice on the way out, so we don't have any food waste. We don't like that. And maybe you want to finish by just saying a few words.
Just on my behalf as well, thank you very much. And as we heard from both DG Environment from the Commission and from the ENVI Committee, the lead rapporteur of the file, that they are willing to make changes. So let's roll up our sleeves, because we only have a few weeks left. It's going to be very exciting few weeks, I can promise.